hello everybody. Mabuhay kayong lahat. Mabuhay tayong lahat dito sa COVID times.
Hello
And
po.
Hello po.
Good morning.
well,
Good
yeah,
morning.
I kind
Morning.
more I kind of miss you guys. I've not been, the last time I saw you was face to face, and it was one big fiesta I remember. And usually Tita Agi's get-togethers are really one big feast. No? So thank you for inviting me to this fiesta again. And well, things have happened to us, my dears, and well, I have been kind of let's see, let me start. So um yeah, so I have collected information since the start of this pandemic here in the Philippines because I have been dealing with so many people in so varied situations, and I'm not just talking about the actual victims of the virus, but also the second victims. And these are the people working, tirelessly in the emergency rooms and in the front line, the medical front line. So bear with me. I think this is about 15 to 20 minute talk. But I was telling the the committee yesterday, na I'm an old man, so I kind of need ramble sometimes, and I asked plus or minus 5 minutes. So all right. So as I said, this is a collection of the information I've been gathering in my interactions with both the victims of this pandemic and the second victims of this pandemic. And it's a lecture that I have not just done now. It's a group of thoughts that I have, or a bunch of thoughts that I have put together as I went on, and I have used them in so many different settings. So permit me to share them with you. And it was interesting because I was listening to the chat just a while ago, and I was listening to the end part of Tita Agi's uh, lecture, and the importance of words. And yeah, words are very, very powerful. In fact, they created the world. I hope everybody can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Doc. Yes.
Yeah, because
Yes po.
well, I really pray at the start of this that my words will be a blessing to you today, because words are very powerful,
Yes.
especially now in this pandemic, especially now when we are in chaos, and
Yes.
especially now when we are moving towards a kind of order. And I was
Yes.
observing what was happening kanina, and it was a microcosm actually of the pandemic. The confusion of where am I in all of this? Can somebody put me in the place where I am? And this and that, and of course the emotions that come with that. So that was a little kind of a microcosm of what I'm going to talk about today, because nobody really knows. Not many of us know what our future will be, and the un the not knowing is very stressful on our minds. Now, if you notice my first slide, it says 5 mental health tips in a pandemic, and quiet time thoughts, I say, because this is the first thing I'll tell you guys. We are in chaos already, my dears. Okay, so you need quiet time. That's one of the first things that you always need to have. Quiet time for yourself, where it's only you and your thoughts and your feelings. And I will be kind of giving you some tips on how to do that in a little while. But you really need to have maybe 30 minutes to an hour a day where you have a quiet time with just your thoughts. Meditation has already been shown to lengthen people's lives. Meditation has been shown to um, prevent mental illness or deteriorations in the brain. So I really do hope, my dear friends, that you will have 1 hour, at least 30 minutes to an hour, where you have quiet time thoughts, where you can ponder your situation. And of course, having the Bible beside you and remembering the teachings of the Bible are excellent to have in your quiet time. We're in chaos. And in order for us to get ordered, we need to have a time to organize what's happening to us. So that's not yet even the first tip. It's just a basic philosophy that everybody has to have in their life, especially. Okay? So let's orient ourselves. And we will, of course, be talking about the stress of the pandemic, but we will not be talking today about mental illness. We will be talking about normal coping so that we don't go into mental illness. So I don't say, so you'll say, so Dr. Ben, what is the line? And when I spoke to you before, I told you that the line here is you're not able to function anymore. You become harmful already. Or you start to be addicted to something already. Yan, mga mahal ko, mga mental illness na po yan. Hindi po yan ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon. Ha? Ang pag-uusapan natin yung mga normal coping strategies. So, let's begin. I want everybody to kind of think now. What have you lost to COVID? So maybe we can summarize it this way. We have lost what was normal before.
We lost the normal before.
Yes.
Social
Amen,
connection.
sister. And of course, diba?
Social connection.
Yeah, social connection. So, diba, hindi na tayo makaka-beso-beso. Hindi na tayo makakaupo doon sa fiesta ni Tita Aggie and kiss and hug ourselves. You remember the last time I was with you, I asked you to do a 20-second hug. You remember that? We can't do that anymore. And it's so sad because that is a basic human need to feel somebody's touch. And everybody knows that not being able to do it creates a lot of mixed feelings in us. It's a feeling of frustration. It's a feeling of, oh, am I just alone in this world? It's a feeling of isolation. Some of us are very, very tenuous now about what is my financial security? How am I going to survive this thing later on? Some of us already have lost their income. Some of us are still waiting. And that waiting is causing a lot of anxiety in us. And you know, when I talk to the frontliners and I'm there in the hospital, you know, we have lost friends and family members. And you know, not being able to even do the rituals that kind of put our minds in a sane state. What are these rituals? The ritual of maybe sitting beside a dying loved one and ushering them from life to the next world. We cannot have a wake anymore. We don't have the capacity anymore to even view our dead loved ones. That's a very important part of being happy, to be able to do that so that it's settled in our mind na umalis na siya. Umalis na talaga siya. So we can already really say goodbye, and I'll be talking about that in a little while. Much of our former lives, dearly beloved, have gone. And the struggle continues. Because what is the thing that you're feeling? Most of us, you know, they talk to me and they say, am I depressed already, Dr. Ben? Am I having an anxiety disorder already? Panic attack na ba to? Or mamamatay na ba ako kasi parating may kalabog itong aking dibdib and I can't sleep and I can't eat and maybe I'm already mentally ill. But sometimes I usually say, you know, from my experience helping other people in complaining about this, it's usually not mental illness, it's just grief. nagluluksa tayo lahat kasi wala na yung dati natin. It's totally different. And we are grieving over our lost world. Now, so we will be talking about how we grieve in a little while. But let me add to one more thing, because it's usual na you undergo the stages of grief, and then once you reach acceptance, which is accepting that the thing that is lost is no longer there and you're able to move on with your life, hindi yan pwede ngayon sa COVID na ganun kasimple lang yun eh. Kasi we need to process na wala na yung former life natin, pero hindi pa rin natin alam kung saan tayo pupunta. We are still uncertain of what really our future will be. So we are already saying na kung pwedeng mawala yung buhay ko noon, baka naman a few years from now, mawawala din yung buhay ko. Because if I can lose a whole world like that, then maybe I can lose also in the future. And that, my dear, are what we call anticipatory grief. Nagluluksa tayo sa mga bagay na hindi pa nawala. And that's the complication now in our world. This is the complication now in our minds. Now, I will just make some proposals today on how we can traverse this somehow. I don't pretend to know the answers. I'm just coming from extrapolations from the many, many people that I have talked to regarding this. Different interactions with COVID. So, unhealthy anticipatory grief, therefore, is what we call anxiety. And anxiety is our brain trying to protect itself. And you remember my last talk. Pag ginagamit mo yung emotional brain mo at ang threatening brain mo instead of your thinking brain, you are going to go into such chaotic behavior. Because what will you do? You will either fight back. Awayan ko, lalabanan ko yung mga pulis dito. Ayoko nang sumunod. Are you going to run away? Or in other words, hide in your house and not go out? Or lock yourself into your room and wait until the threat is past? Freezing. That's what we call freezing. And of course, sana naman hindi fainting. Na mawala lang tayo lahat ng malay. Kasi hindi na natin alam kung anong gagawin natin. It's living the uncertain future in the present. And I don't think that's a very nice thing to do. It's not a very mentally healthy thing to do. But is grief all that bad? And of course, you from my generation know this cartoon character very well. He was created by a man called Charles Schulz, and he's Charlie Brown. And he has a famous expression, good grief. And, it took me a long time to figure out what is he saying? I mean, is grief really good? And as I ponder our situations here in the pandemic, perhaps maybe it is, because I think what we need to do is process the grief over the loss of our last life so that it will make us stronger and resilient. What Tita Agi was telling everybody kanina. Not only to just survive. Now, the first question that Tita Agi told me in preparation for this is, Doc Ben, can you please tell everybody the definition of what naman is wellness? Ano naman talaga ang wellness? And this is my reply. Wellness is defined as an integrated and resilient mind. And an integrated and resilient mind does three things. It's mindful of the body. The person who is integrated is mindful of his mind. And he is mindful of his relationships. And relationships meaning human-to-human relationships, yung tao sa tao. So ikaw, yung tatay mo, yung anak mo, pamilya mo, yung mga coworkers mo, yung neighbors mo. The second relationship is with the environment, the world. How are you interacting with the environment? And the third, of course, and probably the most important in this pandemic, is your relationship to God. Let's talk about the first one first. No? And I'll tell you, there are two tips that are relevant to the body. One tip that is relevant to the body, two tips that are relevant to the mind, and one that is for relationships. Okay? So let's start with the body first. So mental health tip number one, dearly beloved, take compassionate care of your body. Note, it's not just care. It's compassionate care. Because care can be defined in so many, many ways. And I will not go into that already because that will take another lecture. Because it's like you can overdo things, you can over diet, you can over exercise, you can oversleep, you can take overdoses of vitamins, di ba? But what I mean is you take compassionate care, meaning compassion is always in your, parang inaalagaan mo yung sarili mo talaga. Hindi yung talagang push and I want this gone. Okay? So, first is balance your brain by quiet time and sleep. I told this to you during my last talk with you. 6 to 8 hours at night, because we have to follow the dictates of the sun. Hindi ka dapat matutulog habang yung haring araw ay nasa ibabaw. You sleep at night, so maybe from 10 to 7, right? And you have to balance your diet, balance your gut. Your gut, as I did not talk about this really too much last time, but your gut is your second brain, my dears. A lot of nerves there. And si Tita Agi kanina was talking about her experience with the vomiting.
Mm-hmm.
And she said even just a prayer could already stop the vomiting. Even if her body was, kind of rebelling against all of those chemicals that she was taking. But the mind, the intracranial brain, was able to control the gut brain. Kasi second brain natin yan, mga mahal ko. Ang pangatlo, may pangatlo pa. Ang pangatlo is around your heart. But maybe I can come back sometime and talk about that because that's an interesting thing too. But balance the gut. So what does that mean? Ayusin nyo yung kung ano ang pumapasok. Ayusin nyo ang kinakain. Ayusin nyo ang inumin. Ayusin nyo yung lumalabas. Pag constipated ho kayo, hindi ho maganda yon. Kailangan medyo i-regulate nyo rin ang paglabas ng waste. If you're not doing that, then you have to do something about that. The second thing is look after the bacteria in your gut and the concept of probiotics, di ba? One of the things that I'll tell you is maybe the first thing that you take before you take your breakfast in the morning is a probiotic. Alam nyo yan, mura lang yan. Ano yung probiotic na yon? They're healthy bacteria that balance the microbiota of the gut. Kasi marami tayong bacteria sa ating mga intestines, mga mahal ko. At kailangan, ibabalansin natin yan sa healthy na bacteria. Habang ikaw ay tumatanda, kagaya ko, ang bacteria ng gut ay hindi po nababalanse na. Kasi tumatanda din yun, di ba? So, kailangan nating lagyan ng medyo healthy. No? So, you pick your right probiotic. But the gut is a very important brain. Third, exercise. Are you getting exercise? When you move, at I'm not talking about exercise na yung mga daliri, yung exercise kasi nagpipindot ng kung ano-ano. No. It's hingal, breathless exercise, maybe for 20 to 30 minutes in the morning. And I would suggest under the early morning sun. So, the cheapest one there is just jump up and down para hihingalin ka. Why? Because pag hihingalin ka, mga mahal ko, it releases naturally occurring anti-anxiety and antidepressant chemicals in your brain that we call the endorphins. And of course, no drugs. And of course, no addictions. By addictions, I'm not just talking about drugs of addiction. I'm also talking about telenovela addiction. I'm talking about social media addiction. I'm talking about gambling addiction. I'm talking about playing ML the whole day addiction. Diba? Online games and gambling and shopping on Shopee and Lazada and all of that. Now, I'm not saying that they're bad, but I'm saying if your shopping can be an addiction, okay? It's a false way of giving yourself a happy dopaminergic shot. So try to not go there. And maybe, as I said, I talked about this the last time I was with you. The dopamine, I told you, remember, those of you who attended, the pleasure strip in your brain. So that's the body. We're finished with mental health tip number 1. Now, for the mind, medyo komplikado ito ng konti, komplikado in the sense that it's a stepwise suggestion. Okay? So maybe for you guys who want to take some notes, you can also take some notes on the steps. But what I want you to do is think up of one particular problem you have that this pandemic has caused. Okay? Then we will try to apply it to this thing that I'm going to tell you. Fair enough? So everybody think up of one. It can be something like, my company is kind of laying off. And I think maybe it's possible that I could be one of those who will be laid off. Something like that. So let's go. Mental health tip number 2. Stop grieving that our old world is gone. Wag na tayong magluksa. And you'll say, Dr. Ben, how can we do that? So I will put you in I will introduce a term for you. Maybe some of you have heard it before or some of you have not, but it's the word liminal. The liminal space. What does liminal mean? It means a threshold. There are many liminal spaces in our lives, my dears. The transition between evening to morning is a liminal space. Dawn is a liminal space. The transition from morning to evening is dusk, and that is a liminal space. Liminal spaces are everywhere in our lives. Getting married is a liminal space. Becoming born is a liminal space. So, nandito tayo ngayon. We are traversing yung dati nating buhay papunta sa bago nating buhay. And to quote, we are caught in between at least 2 worlds. The one we knew and the one to come. Our consciousness and that of future generations has been changed. We cannot put the genie inside the bottle. So we need to move on, my dears. This is what it's saying. But how does one move on? So if you want a diagram about it, it's like ang dati, which you put your attention down to the bottom of the screen. Known reality yon. Yung dati nating mundo. Papunta na tayo dito sa ibabaw. The unknown reality that we will have. We don't know what that is. But we need to cross this. And how does one cross? Well, you say goodbye to the known reality. Yung mga dati mong paniwala, baguhin natin ng kaunti. And how can we do that? Well, you undergo the stages of grief. Shock and denial. Think about it, guys. When mga March, early March, meron ng mga news na China may virus. Wuhan. What were some of us thinking? Hindi naman tayo apektado niyan. Hindi naman pupunta yan dito. Or kung meron man, hindi naman yan, para lang ubo yan. Uubuhin lang tayo and ganyan. And it took quite a time for people, even, the denial. There are some nations that really were in denial so long that they did not put any restrictions on social distancing and wearing masks. They did it very late. And that's a sign of the denial that we had early on. Mga early March yun. And then the lockdown happened. So ano ang emotions natin? Galit. Bakit hindi ako nakakalabas dito? Bakit hindi tayo makaka-travel? Bakit hindi ako makaka-beso-beso naman lang sa aking mga friends and family? And we were very angry. And that anger can also be seen as communal anger. You saw that early on in some of the other countries. Then we go into, sige na nga, mag-wear ako ng mask, pero dapat mawala na yung virus, ha? Sige na nga, magso-social distancing ako, pero dapat mawala yung virus, ha? Pero hindi pa rin nawala. So many of us now feel this sense of sadness. The sense of sadness na nawala na talaga yon at hindi na talaga, wala na talaga siya. Hindi na talaga matagal siguro bago tayo magkakaroon ng get together the way we did the last time. Maraming wala. And we feel a sadness. But you have to feel the sadness. Don't shut it away. Feel it. Because that's the only way after you're sad that you can move on to the final phase of accepting that our old world is gone. Now you say acceptance, 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 but it's very hard because what does the mind do, my dears? It will always push you back to the known reality kasi ito yung alam natin eh. So, acceptance, acceptance. Yeah, then you go back to the known reality, then you go back to shock and denial again, to anger again, and bargaining, and then depression again. And it's a constant motion, my dear. It's a constant motion. That's why we're so uneasy. The uneasy feeling is a feeling of crossing the liminal threshold of grief. But is that mental illness? No. Okay, so it's like we're like this. It's like we're down in a hallway. We're here, no? Cowered here. No? Nakaluhod tayo. Ano bang nangyari sa atin para tayo na knock out nito? And we have to traverse that hallway. And of course, this is a carpeted hallway with nice lighting. Sana naman we meditate enough so that we can be brave enough to cross into what is unknown behind that door and not to jump into this other door here. Look, there's another door here, my dears, toward the right of your screens. That's an exit. And what does that mean? Ayoko nang bumiyahe. Mag-exit na lang ako. And that's one of the things that we need to avoid because no. And what you were talking about kanina was God has provided this. And now is the time for our ears and eyes to be open and to be attentive to what God wants us to do. So that we need to move down this hallway. Because you know why we need God? Because it might not be a carpeted hallway. It might not be well lighted. It might be dark and cavernous like this. And we don't know what monsters are there. And that is the importance of holding on. Holding on to that really strong faith that He will get us through. So we need to start deconstructing old beliefs. Now you say, hey, what about our belief in God, Dr. Ben? Do we deconstruct that? I said yes, because I know for a fact, many of us are challenging what our definition of God is now. How did He ever allow us to be like this? And we go into the same anger, bargaining, and all of that. And it upsets us because yung ating paniniwala no na blessings, hindi nangyari eh. But you know, this is what I appeal to you as Christians are. Because what is the basic teaching? For me, it's really He never does something that he will let us alone. But he will demand something from us. And maybe you have to, in your quiet time, think about that. And maybe in your quiet time, think about maybe how can I change it now that this is happening to me? So what are the steps here? So we're going now. So meron kayong problema na iisip. Sige nga, so we'll go into steps. Step 1, so supposing I think I'm going to be the one to lose my job there in the company. Okay? So that in itself, my dears, so you list that down as a situation. And it's actually an automatic negative thought. Nagle-lay off yung kumpanya namin. So ako siguro yung number 1 na ili-lay off dyan. It's an automatic negative thought. Hindi po totoo yan. Hindi mo pa alam. Diba? So, kung automatic na negative, sana you already tell yourself na, okay, it's an automatic thought. I really actually don't know. But once you have an ant, kinagat ka ng ant. Okay? So, what happens is that you have feelings that go with the kagat of the ant. So, it's like, I feel sad that I'm going to leave the company. I feel anxious that I don't know where to go. I feel angry na maybe that boss of mine kasi did not give me a good evaluation before. So, I'm probably the first one he'll kick out. Ang daming emotions, di ba? Na sumasabay doon sa negative thought na yon. And feelings are usually scary and numerous. It's like you're being ganged up and being mauled and being mangled by a gang of feelings. Do not force the feelings to go away. Because if you force the feelings to go away, mga mahal ko, it will add to your pain. And that is where most of us fail. We try to say, hindi ko na lang pansinin yan. Hindi ko na lang papansinin yung kalungkutan ko. No. You acknowledge the feelings and don't force it to go away. Rather, acknowledge them one by one and allow yourself a brief time to express it in a non-harmful way. Some of my patients, I ask to journal, to write it down. Especially now na wala namang face-to-face, what I usually tell them is, mag-journal po kayo. Write down the thought and the feeling and the reactions that you're having. That will help. Okay? Because it's a non-harmful way of expressing it. Kahit pag-journal ninyo, gusto nyo murahin whatever you want to mura there in the journal, sige, go ahead. But for a brief time only. Because you have to now let go and express it. Okay? Then, so, ang daming feelings niyan, and you're feeling it, you're crying. Cry, good. If you really feel like crying, then good. If you really want to stamp your foot on the floor, then go ahead. Allow yourself to do that for a brief time. And then what happens? You can't allow yourself to stay there. So the second step is gratefully acknowledge what you have in the present. One of the reactions kanina to one of the participants was giving thanks. What Tita Agi said, always give thanks. So what you do? Di ang kalat-kalat na, ang dami-daming feelings, ang dami-daming gang of feelings, ang dami-daming pero nasusulat mo na siya, napag-isipan mo na siya, then the first thing that you can do to orient yourself in the present time, my dears, is breathe. Because breath signifies and gives a person's mind a message. You're here. You're alive. And you feel the breath coming in and out of your nostrils. Okay? And you acknowledge that and be thankful for that breath. Then you start to feel your physical body. If something muscle in your body is tense, then purposefully relax it. Okay? And you will notice as you're breathing and then you're noticing your tense muscles and ordering the tense muscles to relax ka na lang, tense muscle. Or even if you have to move it a little bit, you move it a little bit. And then you tell your muscle, di ba? Kumalma ka na dyan. Huwag ka nang matitigas masyado. No? And this will put you in the present. Then you open your eyes and then you look at where you are. If you're in your bedroom, then there's your bed, there's a table, there's probably a lamp, there's probably a chair, there's probably a flower there, or the window, or the tree outside your window. Ponder on that for a while, gratefully, and say, pasalamat ako. And it's like, I'm glad that I have this. Even though a lot of my life has gone, but I still have this. And you do that with a thankful and grateful heart that you still have this. Fight the urge to go back. Because as I said, you know, what does the opposite side want to do? It wants you to stay in the past. And it will bring your mind back to the past. And you should need to fight that all the time. Ayoko na kasing mag-grieve eh. Let me not go back there to the past anymore. Ayoko na magiging angry. Ayoko na ng bargaining. Ayoko na ng depression. I don't want to go back anymore. And in your angst, you have to be compassionate to yourself. Step 3, learn how to adapt. So after processing and orienting yourself to being present, ano ba talaga ang problema? So the problem is, I'm in danger of being kicked out from my company. Iba yan sa negative thought. Ang negative thought kanina was, ako yata ang unang masisisante dyan eh. But the realistic problem is, company is retrenching, I might be one to be retrenched. So what are the desired outcomes? Do you really want to still stay in that company? Maybe you don't want to anymore. So if you don't want to anymore, then maybe what do we do? So what is the worst case scenario? And you do a SWOT analysis. Everybody knows how to do this: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you utilize what is there to complete what is not there. You utilize what is there to complete what is potentially going to be not there. Because as Darwin says, it's not the strongest or the most intelligent that will survive. It is the ones most adaptable to change that will. And we all feel disabled now. So what is the next step? Transform what is useless and broken to what is valuable or something that you can use. Disability, my friends, is defined as to remove pride or dignity. If you feel that your pride or dignity is no longer there, then what do you do so that you restore your pride and dignity? So if you're in danger of losing your job and you say, wow, mawawala akong pride kasi wala na akong pera, then maybe you need to kind of, what do I do now to change that so that I can get my pride back? If it's crushing your spirit, then what do I do so that my spirit is not crushed? Withdraw hope. And this is where, being a Christian is such a treasure, because we have, as Christians, and our belief is that there's always this. And of course, it says to deflate curiosity. Mga mahal ko, what we need to do is do the opposite. Be more curious. Pay attention. Because maybe yung financial loss mo, if you just look around you, maybe you can find something that will even give you more financial gain if that's what you want to solve. But do not be not curious. You have to keep on being curious. Inability to see beauty. Oh, yeah, that's the road to depression. Depressed people cannot appreciate what is beautiful. And I'm not talking about the typical beautiful lady or beautiful. No, beauty even in the face of this. Ano ang napakagandang pangyayari dito sa COVID world natin? Marami po eh. Go to the hospitals, go to the front lines. You'll see such beauty there. And of course, to deprive of imaginations or dreams. Ang problema kasi ngayon, hindi natin alam kung paano mangarap. Kasi hindi talaga natin alam kung ano ang mangyayari. But you see, you shouldn't base your dreams on our old beliefs. Change it a little bit, and maybe the dreaming will actually uh, make you traverse the liminal space even better. Because this ability, mga mahal ko, is really the genesis of creativity. Be more creative now. Step 5, syempre, once you have mastered step 1 to 4, my dears, just persist in doing that process. When you have the quiet time every day, go through this process. Ano ba yung ants ko? Ano ba yung feelings that go with the ants? Ano ba talaga ang problema? Ano naman ang mga solutions dun sa problema? How will I adapt to that? But you keep your expectations realistic. Keep reminding yourself that you can't control everything. Renew your competence. Very important. If, you know, I know an ophthalmologist who now is studying to be a chef. An ophthalmologist, because he told me, Ben, I will probably not practice for the next 2 or 3 years kasi because of the COVID. Kasi ang ophthalmologist, kailangan talagang sumilip doon sa mata ng kanilang mga pasyente. No? So, realistically, what did he say? I'm learning now how to cook and be a chef, because that's the thing that he. So renew your competence. If it's something that you still have not learned, then learn it. And of course, you will be disappointed when you try something and it does not go well. So I remind you to be humble when you are disappointed. It's not you. It's the situation that's abnormal. It's not you. Try harder, be better. So that is the second tip. To summarize, you acknowledge the negativity, you gratefully refocus on the present truth, you learn to adapt, you transform, and you persist. But is acceptance enough? And it usually, my dears, in order to traverse the liminal space, just accepting that the old world is gone is not enough. So what must one do? That brings us to mental health tip 3. Sa lahat ng nawala sa atin, mga kapatid, kailangan tayong maghanap ng bago nating patutunguhan. We need to look for the new meaning of this for us. We need to look at what the new purpose is for me. If it's not working in that office anymore, then what is it for me? Okay? So, Charlie Brown's Good Grief, maybe this is what it means. We go through the grief, and we are better from it. So he who has a why to live can bear anyhow. So focus on the meaning, and then how to do it will come after that. Because right now, and maybe even before, living is suffering. And to survive, you need to find the meaning so that the suffering does not happen. And if you have a new meaning, then this demands then new responsibilities for you. So maybe if you want to learn a new trade now, then maybe it's a responsibility for you to get trained in that. So if you have to sit down in lectures and everything, then go and do it, because that's your responsibility. And of course, I always use the Sermon on the Mount as this kind of a something that reminds us that, you're not here to follow just commandments. It's really being good in spite of all the suffering that's happening around you. Because meaning and responsibility, mga mahal ko, that is the thing that will take us across the liminal space. After shock and denial, anger, bargaining, depression and anxiety, acceptance, kulang pa yan. But once you have a new meaning and redefine your new meaning and have your new responsibilities, then we will cross over into the new reality. And no matter if we don't know what that new reality is, we already kind of made it. We made it by ourselves. And that's power. And then I go into the last part. An integrated mind is mindful of relationships. And as I said, the mental health tip 4 is take care of your relationships. Human, environment, and God. On the human relationships. Okay, I put this here because this is what I heard again and again kanina when I was listening to Tita Agi's talk and the discussion after that. Gratitude. When you look at the loss that we have had, it's very important that we be grateful for whatever is left. Because from there, we can appreciate what is not there. And we can say that that is the sacrifice. Because that's, as Christians, we're taught that sacrifice yields reward. And the more you sacrifice, then the greater your reward. Forgiveness. A lot of people are angry at the situation. A lot of people are angry at the government. A lot of people are angry at their mga kamag-anak. A lot of people are angry at God. The only antidote to anger, my dears, is forgiveness. So let's work on that too. And for the economy, di ba? Those who have more in life, we need to be more sharing now. So give great tips, because if you give the ones who are asking for tips or the ones that are even begging on the street, if you give them money, then they can spend that money, and that means that the economy will move forward a little bit more. Little by little, but we need to kind of share. And of course, in human relationships, mga mahal ko, communication is key. Don't lock yourself up and don't stifle your interactions with others. We need to communicate. And that is key to human relationships. So, when you're talking about your relationships naman, human to human, well, this is a nice bentoism. I wonder whether you've heard of this. But Yancey Strickler is a young businessman who used the Japanese bento box as a way for us to analyze how we're taking our care of ourselves now and our loved ones now, and how we plan on taking care of ourselves in the future and our loved ones in the future. So it's just summarized in this, no? So this is your self-interest. Saan kayo interesado? Ngayon at sa kinabukasan. Sa mga co-workers mo o yung kapamilya mo, for them, and what about the future? And you just list down so that you're organized in your mind as to how you're planning your now and your future later on. Now, we're nearing the end of the talk. Relationship with the environment. And this is very important. No? And I want everybody to pay attention to this because we are dealing with something in the environment now. This comes from Jonathan Smith, an epidemiologist at Yale University. I just expanded the Viber message. First, we are in the very infancy of this epidemic's trajectory. Maaga pa tayo. That means even with these measures, we will see cases and deaths continue to rise globally, nationally, and in our own communities in the coming weeks. Our hospitals will be overwhelmed, and people will die that didn't have to. This may lead to some people thinking that social distancing measures are not working. They are. They may feel futile. They aren't. You will feel discouraged. You should. This is normal in chaos, but this is also the normal epidemic trajectory. So stay calm. This enemy that we are facing is very good at what it does. We are not failing. even if the numbers are going up, di ba mga kapatid? We need everybody to hold the line as the epidemic inevitably gets worse. This is not my opinion. This is the unforgiving math of epidemics for which I and my colleagues have dedicated our lives to understanding with great nuance. And this disease is no exception. We know what will happen. I want to help the community brace for this impact. Stay strong and with solidarity, knowing with absolute certainty that what you are doing is saving lives. Even as people begin getting sick and dying, you may feel like giving in. Don't. So, wear a mask and a shield. Practice safe 6 feet at least distance between you and somebody else. Shot ng alcohol muna. Clean your hands. Have always alcohol 70% and 70% in your pocket. Every time you touch something, shut muna. Every time you even open a door, shut muna. Every time you hold your bag or your phone, shut muna. Do not cheat, my dears. 3 major reasons is ba? These. They are my colleagues, so I can speak without a mask. We can eat lunch together. So hospital, I'll not mention the hospital, but one of these reasons, the residents eat together in lunch. The nurses, kumpul-kumpul yan sa lunch. It's a normal human thing. So, they are my close friends, so I can speak without a mask. They are my family, so I can speak without a mask. Don't do this, guys. What we need to think of is hold the wall steady. Hold the wall steady. And each time that you do what we need to do, the mask, the social distancing, and the cleaning of hands, that is holding the wall. Hold it firmly. And of course, I think Tita Agi, already talked to us about this in her talk. Thriving means being a force for good, even in the spite of all of this COVID chaos. And that is your relationship with God. Final mental health tip. Many just suffer their mental symptoms because they think it's nakakahiya to seek help. It's okay to seek help when you are not okay. So to summarize, take compassionate care of your body. Second tip, stop grieving that our old world is gone. Third tip, find a new meaning and a new responsibility. Fourth tip, take care of your relationships. That's human to human, environment.
Okay,
It's
sige
okay
po.
to seek help when you're not okay.
Mhm.
And I'll show my last slide. And of course, it's a slide with a symbol of, alam nyo ba to? That's Star Trek, di ba? And boldly go where no one has gone before. And all of us are in this spaceship, my dear.
Yeah.
So we need to be solidly, arm to arm, fighting this thing. Marami pong salamat for your time. And I hope I've helped today.